The moment Adrian stood up in the boardroom and announced he had sold our startup to our biggest competitor without my consent, my heart stopped. What I didn't expect was that this single act would not only destroy our business partnership, but also out our secret love to the entire world, forcing me to face the truth about who I was. It was supposed to be just another Tuesday in our sleek San Francisco office, the kind where the fog still clung to the Golden Gate Bridge visible through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Kai Thompson, 28 and proud founder of TechLink, had poured everything into this app that connected small businesses with local clients in ways no one else had managed. Adrian Reyes, my co-founder, sat across the polished oak table, his light brown hair catching the morning light, green eyes fixed on the projector screen instead of me. We had kept our relationship hidden for 3 years, stolen moments in late-night coding sessions, and weekend hikes in Marin County where no one knew us. The tech world was cutthroat enough without adding whispers about the two guys running the show. Investors liked clean, marketable stories, not complicated personal ones. The team of 8 leaned forward as Adrian cleared his throat. I've reviewed the numbers, and after careful consideration, I've accepted VentureForge's offer. The acquisition closes today. Gasps rippled around the table. My coffee mug slipped from my fingers, splashing across the notes I'd prepared for our next funding pitch. What the hell are you talking about? I demanded, voice low but shaking. Adrian finally met my gaze, something unreadable flickering there. Regret, maybe, or relief. It's done, Kai. The board signed off last week. Your shares are being transferred. The room blurred. VentureForge wasn't just a competitor. They were the company we'd beaten out for every major client in the last year. Adrian had negotiated this behind my back. My mind raced through the late nights we'd spent dreaming of independence, the way his hand had brushed mine under the conference table during investor calls. Now this. As the team filed out in stunned silence, one of our developers, Marcus, lingered by the door. This is because of what I found on the server, isn't it? He muttered. The emails between you two. Adrian said it was the only way to protect the company from the fallout. My stomach dropped. Emails. Private messages where we'd let our guard down, confessing feelings we'd never dared say aloud at work. Adrian had used our love as leverage? I stormed after him into the hallway, grabbing his arm. Explain yourself. Now. He pulled away, jaw tight. My family found out last month, Kai. Dad threatened to cut me off completely if I didn't fix this. Selling was the only clean exit. I thought I was saving us both. His voice cracked on the last word, but the damage was done. By afternoon, the news hit TechCrunch. TechLink acquired in surprise deal, rumors swirling about internal conflicts. And buried in the comments, anonymous posts hinting at personal entanglements between the founders. I drove home to my small apartment in the Mission District in a daze, the city lights blurring through tears I refused to let fall. My phone buzzed nonstop, investors pulling funding, reporters wanting statements. But the worst call came from my parents in Chicago. Kai, what's this about you and that Reyes boy? My father barked, voice thick with disappointment that had nothing to do with business. We raised you better than this. Come home. We'll sort it out. The line went dead before I could respond. Alone on my couch, the weight of years spent hiding crashed down. Who was I without the startup, without Adrian's quiet support? The man I'd loved had chosen family expectations and a quick payout over us. Betrayal burned hotter than any rejection I'd feared from the world. That night, I stared at the ceiling, replaying every shared laugh, every whispered promise during our secret weekends. Adrian had sacrificed our dreams to appease his conservative parents back in Texas, but in doing so, he'd forced my own truth into the open. I wasn't just a betrayed partner. I was a man whose entire identity had been built on silence. Tomorrow, I'd have to decide whether to fight for what was left or walk away and rebuild from nothing. The choice felt impossible, but one thing was clear. Staying hidden was no longer an option. By morning, the legal notices arrived via email. Adrian's signature stared back at me from the acquisition papers, cold and final. I called my best friend from college, Lena, the only person who'd known about us from the start. Kai, this is insane, she said, voice steady over the line from her apartment in Oakland. You can't let him get away with this. Come over. We'll figure out your next move. Her words were the first anchor in the storm. As I packed a bag, doubt gnawed at me. Had Adrian ever truly loved me? Or had I been convenient until the pressure mounted? The drive across the bay felt like crossing into a new life, one where secrets no longer protected me, but chained me. Little did I know, this betrayal was only the beginning of a journey that would test every part of who I thought I was. Lena's apartment smelled of fresh coffee and the faint vanilla of her favorite candle, a small comfort as I collapsed onto her couch and spilled everything. She listened without interruption, her dark curls framing a face etched with concern. "He's not the man you thought he was," she said finally, handing me a mug. "But you are. And now the world's going to see the real Kai Thompson." Her words stung because they were true. For years, I played the straight-laced entrepreneur, smiling through investor dinners while Adrian and I stole glances across the room. Now, with the acquisition public and whispers turning to outright speculation online, my identity as a gay man wasn't a private truth anymore. It was front-page fodder. The next few days blurred into a nightmare of damage control. I met with our former lawyer, a sharp woman named Carla who specialized in startup disputes. "The contract Adrian pushed through has loopholes," she explained over video call, her office in downtown San Francisco visible behind her. "But fighting it means going public with everything. The relationship, the emails Marcus leaked to force the sale. Are you ready for that?" I hesitated, the weight of my family's expectations pressing down. My dad, a retired factory supervisor who'd always preached, "Keep it simple, son," had already left 3 voicemails demanding I man up and fix this mess. My mom texted separately, softer but no less painful, "We love you, but this lifestyle. It's not what we prayed for." The societal pressure wasn't abstract. It was the silence at family gatherings, the careful way relatives avoided asking about my dating life. I paced Lena's living room, phone in hand, debating whether to call Adrian. When I finally did, his voice was tired. "Kai, I didn't want it to happen like this. My parents threatened to expose us first. Selling was damage control." Damage control. The words landed like a slap. "You threw away 3 years and our company to hide from them." I shot back. "I thought we were building something real." He sighed, the sound heavy with exhaustion. "We were. But the world isn't ready for 2 guys running a multi-million-dollar deal without questions. I sacrificed us to save the team." The call ended in silence, leaving me hollow. Had love ever been enough? Or had fear always been the third person in our relationship? That weekend, Lena dragged me to a small support group she'd found through a local LGBTQ center in the Castro. The room was modest, folding chairs in a circle under fluorescent lights, but the stories hit hard. A man in his 30s shared how coming out cost him his family business. A woman in her 20s talked about navigating corporate America as a lesbian. For the first time, I spoke aloud. My boyfriend sold our startup and outed me to protect his family image. Now I'm the villain in my own story. The group nodded, no judgment, just understanding. It was the first crack in the isolation I'd carried for years. Walking out into the cool San Francisco evening, the rainbow flags lining the streets felt less like decoration and more like a quiet challenge. But the psychological toll mounted. Nights brought nightmares of boardrooms filled with accusing eyes. Mornings brought rejection emails from potential investors who'd heard the rumors. One afternoon, my younger brother called from Chicago. "Dad's not speaking to me because I defended you," he said quietly. "He thinks this is contagious or something." The traditional expectations I'd dodged my whole life now stared me down. I wasn't just losing a company. I was losing the version of myself my family could accept. Decisions loomed. Should I sue Adrian and drag our love through courts, or cut ties and start over? The latter felt like surrender, but the former risked everything I'd rebuilt emotionally. Lena noticed my spiral. "You need to act, Kai, not react." She was right. By week's end, I'd hired Carla full-time and begun piecing together evidence of Adrian's unilateral moves. The betrayal wasn't just personal. It was a calculated business move that had exposed my deepest vulnerability. As I reviewed old contracts late one night, a spark ignited. What if this wasn't the end? What if I could turn the pain into fuel? The thought terrified me, but for the first time since the boardroom, I felt something close to purpose. Adrian's choice had shattered me, but maybe, just maybe, it had also freed me to become someone stronger. The lawsuit papers arrived on a rainy Thursday, the kind where San Francisco's streets glistened like they were crying too. Carla slid them across her desk with a grim smile. We've got a solid case for breach of fiduciary duty. Adrian didn't have authority to sell without your sign-off. I stared at the documents, Adrian's name printed neatly beside mine. Suing the man I'd loved felt like carving out my own heart, but sitting still wasn't an option. The media frenzy had died down slightly, but online forums still buzzed with speculation about the gay founder's dramatic split. Societal pressure wasn't loud protests. It was the subtle side-eyes from former colleagues and the way potential dates ghosted after a quick Google search. I moved into a temporary studio in Oakland to escape the memories in my old apartment. Mornings started with runs along the waterfront, pushing my body until the emotional fog lifted. One crisp dawn, I bumped into an old college acquaintance, Jordan, who ran a small venture fund. Heard about TechLink, he said, falling into step beside me. Tough break. But if you're open, I know some angels who invest in founders with real stories. His wink hinted he knew the full picture. It was the first positive lead since the sale. We grabbed coffee, and over lattes, I opened up more than I had in months. I spent years hiding who I am to protect the business, I admitted. Now that it's gone, I don't know who I am without the mask. Jordan nodded. That's the turning point for a lot of us. Own it, and watch doors open. Encouraged, I started sketching ideas for a new venture, a platform that not only connected businesses but built in tools for inclusive workplaces, something born from my own pain. The psychological shift was gradual. Therapy sessions twice a week peeled back layers. The fear of disappointing my family, the way Adrian's betrayal mirrored every time I'd silenced myself. You made decisions to survive, my therapist said gently. Now decide to thrive. Those words echoed as I reached out to former TechLink employees who'd been let go in the acquisition. 5 agreed to meet at a neutral cafe. We believed in what you built, Kai, one said, eyes sincere. Not the corporate version Adrian sold us on. The friendship with Lena deepened into something unbreakable. She helped me draft a public statement, not a full coming-out press release, but honest words about integrity and moving forward. Posting it felt like jumping off a cliff. Likes and shares poured in from unexpected places. Other gay entrepreneurs, allies in tech, even a few distant relatives who messaged privately with support. But backlash followed. My father called again, voice clipped. You're embarrassing the family name. The rejection stung, yet it didn't break me the way it once would have. I was learning that acceptance started within. Adrian texted late one night. I saw your statement. I'm sorry for how it went down. I stared at the screen for hours before replying. Sorry doesn't rebuild trust. The exchange reopened old wounds, misunderstandings flooding back. Had he ever planned to come out with me? Or was I always the secret he'd eventually discard? Sleep evaded me as I weighed forgiveness against self-preservation. By morning, I decided, focus on the new platform. I registered the company name, linked forward, and filed for initial funding. The act of creating felt like reclaiming power Adrian had taken. As weeks turned to months, small victories mounted. Jordan introduced me to 3 investors who didn't flinch at my story. Your authenticity is your edge, one said. The psychological growth was tangible. Decisions no longer came from fear, but from clarity. I faced the mirror each day and saw a man no longer defined by hiding. Yet the ache for what Adrian and I could have been lingered, a quiet undercurrent. The journey was far from over, but for the first time, I believed the ending might be mine to write. Spring arrived in the Bay Area with wildflowers pushing through cracks in the sidewalks, mirroring the fragile hope I felt as Link Forward gained traction. The new office was modest, a shared space in a converted warehouse in Oakland, but it buzzed with the same energy TechLink once had. My small team worked late, refining the app that now included resources for LGBTQ-owned businesses, a direct response to the isolation I'd endured. This isn't just software, I told them during our first all-hands. It's a statement. Their nods fueled me, proof that my pain could create something meaningful. A major turning point came during a pitch meeting in Silicon Valley. The room was filled with venture capitalists in crisp suits, tablets glowing. Halfway through my presentation, one leaned forward. We've heard the rumors about your past. Does that affect how you run things? The question hung heavy, societal judgment wrapped in professional curiosity. Instead of deflecting, I met his eyes. It makes me better. I've lived the cost of silence. Link Forward exists because I refuse to stay hidden. The room shifted. Two partners nodded appreciatively. By week's end, we had a term sheet for seed funding, larger than anything TechLink had secured early on. The decision to own my truth had opened doors Adrian's secrecy had slammed shut. Yet conflict escalated when Adrian reached out again, this time through a mutual contact. "He's struggling," Lena relayed after a coffee meetup. "The acquisition money didn't bring the peace he expected. His family is still distant." The news stirred mixed emotions: anger at the betrayal, pity for the man I'd loved. Misunderstandings resurfaced in late-night reflections, the times he'd pulled away during arguments, claiming work stress when really it was fear. I scheduled a neutral meeting at a quiet park overlooking the bay, the same spot where we'd once shared our first kiss years ago. Adrian arrived looking thinner, shadows under his eyes. "Kai, I never meant to hurt you like that," he started, voice rough. "Dad gave me an ultimatum after finding those emails. Sell or be disowned. I chose the company because I thought it was our future. I listened, the breeze carrying salt from the water. You chose safety over us," I countered. "And in doing so, you forced me to become who I am now." The conversation stretched for hours, revelations spilling out. He'd sacrificed our love thinking it would protect me too. The psychological weight lifted slightly as we acknowledged the shared pain, but trust remained fractured. We parted with a tentative agreement to stay civil, no promises beyond that. Family pressure peaked when my mother flew out unannounced. We met at a cafe near my office, her hands trembling around her tea. "Your father misses you," she said softly. "But he doesn't know how to say it. This lifestyle scares him." I took her hand. "Mom, it's not a lifestyle. It's me. And I'm happier than I've ever been." Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't pull away. The moment wasn't full acceptance, but it was a start, a sacrifice of old expectations for new understanding. Back at the office, the team celebrated our first major client win, the energy infectious. The major turning point solidified when Link Forward's beta launched successfully. Downloads surged, media outlets picking up the story of the founder who turned betrayal into innovation. I stood on the rooftop of our building one evening, city lights twinkling below, and realized the man staring back in reflections was someone I finally recognized. Adrian's betrayal had been the catalyst, but my decisions, to fight, to speak, to build, had shaped the outcome. Growth wasn't linear. It was messy, filled with sleepless nights and quiet triumphs. As summer approached, I felt ready for whatever came next, even if it meant facing Adrian again in the market. Summer heat blanketed San Francisco as Link Forward expanded rapidly, our user base doubling monthly. I hired more staff, including a few from TechLink who'd quietly reached out after the acquisition fallout. The office hummed with purpose, whiteboards covered in growth strategies and diversity initiatives that felt personal. One afternoon, during a strategy session, news broke. VentureForge was struggling post-acquisition, their stock dipping on reports of internal mismanagement. Adrian's name appeared in articles as the former co-lead now sidelined. The irony wasn't lost on me. His choice to sell had backfired spectacularly. A loyal friend from the old days, Marcus, the developer who'd first discovered the emails, rejoined the team. I never agreed with how Adrian handled it, he confessed over lunch. But I saw how scared he was. Families like his, they don't bend easy. His words highlighted the rifts in friendships the betrayal had caused. Some old colleagues had distanced themselves, fearing association with the drama. Marcus's return felt like redemption, a reminder that true bonds endured. We spent evenings coding prototypes, our conversations shifting from business to life. "You've changed, Kai," he said one night. "In the best way. Owning your story makes you unstoppable." The psychological battles continued in quieter moments. Therapy uncovered layers of internalized shame from years of societal whispers. "Every time you hid your relationship, you told yourself you weren't enough," my therapist noted. Facing that truth head-on led to small acts of courage, attending Pride events openly, speaking at a local tech conference about inclusive leadership. The applause wasn't just for the app, It was for the man willing to stand exposed. Yet doubt lingered about Adrian. A chance encounter at a networking mixer brought us face to face. He looked worn but composed, extending a hand. Congrats on the launch. Link forward is impressive. The conversation was brief, but the eye contact carried years of unspoken history. I regret how I ended things, he admitted softly. You deserved better. That night, alone with my thoughts, I weighed the possibility of forgiveness. The sacrifice Adrian had made, for his family, mirrored my own losses, yet his actions had consequences that forced my growth. Misunderstandings from our past surfaced in memories. Arguments where he'd shut down, claiming business stress when fear of exposure paralyzed him. The emotional climax built as I considered reaching out properly. Instead, I channeled the energy into Link Forward's next phase, an acquisition offer from a major player who valued our inclusive model. Negotiating the deal felt like poetic justice, my decisions now leading where Adrian's had faltered. Family ties strengthened slowly. My brother visited for a weekend, admitting Dad had started reading articles about me. He's proud in his way, he said. The traditional expectations were bending, not breaking, but it was progress. Societal pressures eased as more doors opened, investors seeking me out for panels on authenticity in business. The journey had transformed me from a man defined by secrets to one defined by choices. As fall approached, with Link Forward positioned for market dominance, I sensed the final pieces falling into place. The man who'd betrayed me had inadvertently given me the strength to lead, not just a company, but my own life. Fall colors painted the Bay Area in golds and reds as Link Forward closed its landmark deal, absorbing elements of the struggling venture forge and positioning us as the undisputed leader in inclusive business tech. Headlines proclaimed my rise, the founder who'd turned personal and professional betrayal into industry dominance. Standing on stage at the launch event in a packed San Francisco Convention Center, I scanned the crowd and spotted Adrian in the back row. Our eyes met, and for the first time, the pain felt distant, replaced by quiet understanding. The months leading to this moment had been a whirlwind of strategic moves and emotional reckonings. I'd confronted Adrian one final time over coffee in a neutral cafe, the air thick with unresolved history. You sacrificed us for them, I said evenly. But in doing so, you pushed me to sacrifice the old version of myself. He nodded, eyes glistening. I see that now. My family. They're starting to come around, but it cost me everything I valued. The conversation brought closure, not reconciliation. Our love had evolved into mutual respect amid the consequences of our choices. No dramatic reunion, just two men acknowledging the growth born from loss. The psychological release was profound. I'd faced the truth and emerged whole. Lena toasted with me afterward, her presence a constant anchor. You did it, Kai? Not despite the betrayal, but because of how you responded. Friendships that had rift mended through shared victories, proving loyalty could withstand pressure. Family calls grew warmer. My parents even attended a virtual demo of the app, Dad gruffly admitting it looked useful. The traditional expectations hadn't vanished, but acceptance had carved space within them. Societal shifts felt tangible too, younger founders reaching out, inspired by my journey from hidden love to open leadership. The emotional climax peaked during a quiet hike in Marin, the same trails where Adrian and I once walked in secret. Alone on a ridge overlooking the Pacific, I reflected on every decision. The lawsuit I'd pursued fairly, the platform I'd built authentically, the identity I'd claimed unapologetically. Betrayal had stripped away illusions, leaving room for truth. I'd sacrificed comfort for growth, and the rewards, market leadership, inner peace, genuine connections, outweighed the scars. Adrian's path diverged, but mine led forward. As the sun set, painting the sky in vibrant hues, I felt the full weight of my transformation. The man who'd entered that fateful boardroom no longer existed. In his place stood someone who understood love's complexities, friendship's resilience, and the power of facing oneself. The story wasn't about revenge or reunion. It was about rising above both. True or false, betrayal in love and business can ultimately lead to deeper self-acceptance and greater success than staying hidden ever could.